Well, look, welcome back to Andertons TV, everybody. I have got the outrageously talented Matteo Mancuso here today.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to finally get you in the studio. I know this has taken one or two attempts to do, but we're very lucky because you're in the UK at the moment doing some dates.
Yeah.
And you very, very kindly decided to make some time to come down to Guildford. What can I say that hasn't already been said by guitar players far more important than I'll ever be? Your technique is ridiculous and different, I suppose, which is probably what makes you most interesting. But for those that perhaps don't know you, just give us a quick. What are you doing in the UK at the moment? What have been your sort of highlights so far, and then we'll go back and talk about earlier life and stuff.
Yeah. Well, right now I'm currently working on a project called Drift Lab, and we did the first gigs in UK. The first one was Manchester. I think it was April 3rd. And 2 days ago we were at the Ronnie Scott. We actually did 2 sold out, first and second set,
Amazing.
so it went pretty good, luckily. And then I got to see Joe Bonamassa yesterday at the Royal Albert Hall. It was an amazing concert. Yeah, right now I'm here.
The highlights,
that's it. I will stay actually another week, but just for vacation, because my girlfriend convinced me to book some extra days.
Oh, well, I hope you have a wonderful time. But let's.
Yeah.
So, what are you? 28 now? 27?
I'm 27.
27.
Yeah.
Mad. And your first solo album came out last year.
Last year in July. Yeah.
Which is a guitar instrumental, great album, eclectic mix of sort of jazzy, rocky, kind of bluesy stuff. Yeah. Mainly on the electric, but a little bit of acoustic.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful album. You first came to sort of prominence, I think, as via YouTube, maybe 5-6 years ago. But I know you grew up in a beautiful place in Italy. Your father was a guitar player, so let's talk about his influence on your playing and your first sort of introductions to the guitar.
Well, it was first the big influence, let's say, the first big influence. Because I started playing when I was 10, and many people think that I started with classical because I play with fingers. Mm-hmm. But actually I started with the electric because what I was hearing most of the time were the traditional 70s rock bands like Deep Purple, AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, and things like that. So I started with the electric guitar because I wanted to play in distortion, I wanted to, play this kind of stuff. All that kind of old school kind of rock, especially AC/DC, because I basically started to learn about chords thanks to AC/DC. And so I was basically a rock guy first, and then I started to implement some classical stuff, thanks also to my father, because he also plays classical guitar. And I started with fingers because I always saw him playing classical guitar with fingers, and I just thought that every guitar was meant to be played like that, I didn't know that you should use a pick for electric and fingers with classical.
It's funny how that... I remember Eric Gales saying, because he'll play with his thickest string at the bottom and his thinnest string at the top, and he just said, for the first 2 or 3 years of me seeing anybody play the guitar, because that's how his brother plays, he just thought that was how the guitar was strung. So it's interesting how even subconsciously maybe before you even start to play, you're already looking at the people around you that are influencing you. But I mean that's obviously become a huge part of how you're different to other guitar players. Yeah. But tell us about, was it your father that was introducing you to some of the jazzier kind of musicians that have influenced you? So what was his record collection like?
Well, first of all, we started by listening a lot of different stuff. I remember one of the first records I listened was actually one record from the Beach Boys, and it was called Pet Sounds. It's actually one of the most famous albums by Beach Boys. And I was listening to that because it was in my car, and my father is a big fan of Beach Boys, so that was kind of my introduction to old music, let's say. And then I began to be more interested in jazz because I wanted to know more about the guitar itself, and I always was fascinated about improvising over the changes, also improvising over the blues, and I just wanted to know how to do it, you know. And that's when I started to listening a lot of different stuff. I remember that the first jazz player that I heard was Wes Montgomery.
Okay.
So it was my kind of introduction to the traditional jazz guitar.
Yeah.
But it was like a mix that there isn't really an order to that, because I was listening Wes Montgomery at the same time Paul Gilbert and a lot of different players, and that was also thanks to YouTube. YouTube is a big part, I think, of my formation, because my generation has internet and we have a lot of access to a lot of information thanks to that. So yeah, I think because I was really curious about how these things function, and that's it. I mean, my father was really important to me because it was more than a teacher. I always say that it was more like a listening guide. He never said to me that you should do this like that, or you should use the pick, or you should use fingers only. He never constricted me to play just in one style. He always said to me, you need to listen music that you like, but at the same time listen as much music as you can. So I never thought that I would be like a fusion player. I actually never thought that I will only play just one style, you know, because that's not who I am actually. That's why I try to.
When was that clear to you? Because I know you were lucky you went to a conservatoire, I think, at home, and then you went to Berkeley. You got a scholarship to go to Berkeley.
No, actually, I won the scholarship, but I didn't went there because
you didn't?
I didn't, because I wanted to finish my studies in Sicily first.
Okay.
Yeah.
But so who, you know, if at that age, you know, I sort of remember myself as a 15, 16-year-old guitar player, and I don't ever really. I think for me it was about, you know, wanting to be more of a rock star kind of, you know, rock blues guitar player, and I think that's probably more normal, if you like, for a young man of that kind of age. But you seem to have sort of a more mature guitar taste for your age.
No, I don't think there was much. I wanted to be in a rock band too. I mean. And especially when I was listening a lot of the shred stuff, like Yngwie Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert. We all have that kind of shred period, you know. And what I wanted to do was playing in a band and be the virtuoso player of the moment, you know. And we all had that moment, I think. But it was useful for me because of the technique. I tried to play things that are actually easier with the pick rather than fingers. And then I transitioned my approach when I was like in my 20s, I think. I started to implement more the fingerstyle technique in order to have a more unique approach, let's say. Because before the 20s, I was playing basically licks and things that pick users were playing. I wanted to have a more unique approach, not only on the technique, but also on the vocabulary. That's why I started to implement more my thumb also and playing in a diverse way. But when I was a teenager, it was like I want to be in a rock band, I want to do a lot of solos, and like everybody, I think.
Let's talk a little bit about your technique. I know it's probably something that I wonder if it gets a bit boring, people sort of overly focusing on this, but it does enable you to play styles, particularly I think when you're jumping from string to string, that you just couldn't play with a pick. But when did you begin to sort of become consciously aware that this was a style that you could develop and be unique yourself?
Well, it was because back when I started with fingers, then I, of course, realized after a while that you should use a pick for the electric, but I was too lazy to restart again. So that's why I continued to play like that.
Yeah.
And this technique, I mean, I use it sometimes for my clean playing, you know. And it's kind of a bass technique, let's say.
Can I just angle you slightly? That's it.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
everyone can.
And it's more like when I'm playing scales, like 3-note per string stuff, I mostly use this kind of bass technique. And that's why I have this plastic thing here in order to hold my thumb. But
But you're going beyond just using your first and second finger, aren't you?
no, it's actually also the third one.
Yeah, you're playing.
So if I have like 3-note per strings, I always use. Yeah, it's mostly like that. And of course, it depends on the style.
How much compression do you have on your sound, or are you?
Well, no, I actually don't have compression on this one.
Because I was listening to your album over the last couple of days and thinking, I wonder, you get this, you get a dynamic in your playing that I can hear whether you're hitting a note with attack or whether you're looking for a softer sound.
Yeah.
But you're able to achieve a really consistent sort of level as well. And I was thinking, is it a heavily compressed kind of tone, or is that again something that allows
well, it's
you to...
something I worked on a lot, and that's the key is to me the length of the nails, because if you don't have nails, the sound would be too muddy and dark, and you don't have the attack. If you have a little bit of nails, just like mine, you know, they're not really long like a classical player, but at the same time I prefer the sound if it is a mix of nail and flash. So I have the attack at the same time it is dark enough for me. But I don't really use compression. It's something I worked on a lot, especially with this kind of right-hand technique. And then later on I started to use also my thumb, because back when I started it was only this kind of technique, but it has its limitations, of course. So it's really hard to string skip with this technique unless you use, of course, your thumb. And that's when I came to, you know, use more this kind of... And this is more suitable for like arpeggio stuff, like the classical sweep picking. You can do it easily with fingers, and that's because you have like one finger for each string. It's like having 4 picks prepared, but you have to work on it, especially for the sound, because it's like having 4 different type of picks sometimes. You don't have like 4 jazz 3s. You have like a jazz 3, then you have a Dunlop, then you have another one. So it's really tough to have a even sound with this technique, and I'm still working on it actually. So,
do you find the finger style? Do you find it harder to translate that style into a distorted sound, or you know, because I think it suits the cleaner, slightly softer, jazzier sort of tone. When you're going into distortion, how do you make sure are you still able to find those string harmonics and that kind of sense that you feel sometimes you sort of need a pick for?
Well, it is a different sound, of course. I try to play harder when I'm playing on distortion, because it sounds more like the pick. So. So when I play this kind of stuff, a little bit of palm muting there, and I can play it because the fingers are there and the palm is there. So it is similar to the pick. The attack is similar to the pick, but it's not the same, of course. But it's really useful for string skipping. So if you want to play like... and you want to start again with the first string, you can do it. With the pick, it's a little bit harder to play like that, unless you are using hybrid picking, of course. So you can play lines like... and you can string skip from the 4 to the 6. And it's not really hard with fingers because, as I said, the fingers is already there. But of course, there are things that are easier with the pick and things that are easier with fingers. That's not a
It's
correct
outrageously
technique.
clean, your technique. You know, it's
Thank you.
Now, another player that I know, you know, plays without a pick most of the time and gets a cool sound, but he's much more. I would say he's more. I'm thinking of a guy called Jared James Nichols. I don't know if you.
Oh, yeah.
Big muscly guy, and even, you know, like a Mark Knopfler style. I think they're more. Even Jeff Beck, you know, they're more. They're a finger style vibe, but they're much more. You know, like a pull off with the thumb style sound. You're again. You are trying for more of a classical or a flamenco even style approach there, aren't you?
That was because I wanted to shred like a madman, first of all. So I wanted to try. I wanted to have a technique that was suitable for the kind of licks I had in my mind. And one of the big influences was Eric Johnson, the first virtuoso player that I listened.
Right.
And I was looking to like a way to do the classic like Eric Johnson lick. And that's why I worked a lot on my technique in order to get things clean. I didn't want to play fast, but I want to play as clean as I can.
Is it Open Fields? The track before Drop D on the album, I think it's Open Fields. It's like the second half of that goes full tribute to Eric Johnson, sort of Joe Bonamassa style. There's some licks in there. And I liked that, because is that the fourth track on the album maybe? So the first three are, I guess, probably, you know, more of a guitar fusiony, jazzy kind of vibe, and then there's sort of, you get these two tracks in the middle, Open Fields and Drop D, that go full kind of, you know, into blues rock and then a much more rocky sort of vibe. And I think, again, it shows off the breadth of your ability, I suppose, and that there doesn't seem to be, or maybe there is, this is an interesting one. Is there a style of music that you think at some point your fingerstyle technique will prevent you, not prevent is too strong a word, but, you know, is there a style that you think will just be harder to achieve playing fingerstyle?
There are some metal stuff that I think they sound better with the pick. They just sound better with the pick. And
you need the
down picking kind of stuff. I mean, I can do it, but it's not the same sound. But it's not an issue for me because I was never interested in metal. So, but there are some things where, okay, if you want to achieve that kind of sound, I think you need to use the pick. And there are, of course, some things where you can try to have to get similar to the pick. And I remember when I was studying Technical Difficulties by Paul, I was playing like that. And the problem was that the palm muting was missing, you know?
Of course.
I mean, the notes are there, but the palm muting is the part of the sound. So I was trying to play like that. But it's not quite the same thing. So I just gave up on that.
I was waiting for this moment of going how you achieved it, but no, you just gave up. That's fair enough.
No, because I can get to, like, it's similar, but it's not the same thing. And if it's not the same thing for me, it's not good enough, you know? So that's why I just gave up on that. You can't achieve everything. I mean, if I wanted to achieve the same sound as Paul Gilbert, I just have played with the pick, you know? That's why I try to develop my own licks, my own ideas, my own stuff. So Paul Gilbert can't play my stuff. So no, I'm just joking. I can't play Paul Gilbert stuff, of course.
I mean, for people interested in your technique, are you doing anything with, you know, are there places people can go to find out more about your technique? Did you do some stuff with JCC, I think, didn't you?
Yeah. Tomorrow and the day after, we will record some stuff for a fingerstyle masterclass. It will be a full fingerstyle masterclass. And it will actually be the first time that I release material like that, because I never actually did lessons with people. I don't consider myself a good teacher, you know.
Right.
So that's why I contacted Jam Track Central. I said, okay, you take care of all the stuff, you write the stuff, and I just play. But we are working on a, full fingerstyle masterclass in a very methodical way. So yeah, I hope it will be a very good result.
Well, I've got a couple more questions just about music and where you think you're going to go musically, and then we will start to talk about gear, because I know that we're a gear channel.
Yeah.
I suppose one is, I really enjoyed watching the interview that you did with Rick Beato and Matteo Sasato.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
I think Rick's a great interviewer, and he got some. It was really interesting to compare the two of you stylistically. What I wondered, do you see? I mean, Matteo has obviously elected to become a sideman to some amazing artists, as well as doing his own thing. But I think he's obviously making a great living, and probably having a great time as well, touring with some amazing bands. What's your where do you see your next journey going? Do you think you'll just want to stay the front man, be the main guy in some sort of jazz trio or instrumental trio, or do you think you could see yourself being a sideman for another artist?
Well, I see it like that. I would like to try to be a solo artist while I am at this age, and then maybe be more like a session player. But I want to, release my music first, show my ideas to people, and then being also a session player would be fun. But I think it's a different kind of mindset. I mean, I'm more on the creative side of things. I don't want to just show people that I'm good with guitar. I don't want to focus too much on the technique side of things. I just want to make music that people like, and myself, of course, like. And I think that's the right age to do it, like release as much music as you can, and then try to be a session player. But I mean, you can perfectly do both. Matteo's can do both perfectly. Not me, because I'm incredibly lazy. I'm not productive like Matteo's. But yeah, I can do like one thing at a time. I can concentrate only on one thing at a time. And if I had to like accept everything that comes to me, like session work and all the stuff, I would probably never did an album, So I like to, focus on one thing at a time, and then if the time comes, I will be more of a session player, let's say.
I can't remember. I remember a story, and I can't remember whether I heard this from Guthrie Govan or from Stephen Wilson, but it was about the time when Guthrie was in the Stephen Wilson band. And I remember that there was a story about basically Guthrie was just too much for, he had so much ability and wanted to make the solos so incredible that it didn't fit so well with the music, the songs, if you like, that Stephen was trying to tour. And I wonder how would you deal with a situation, if you were working with another artist, do you think you could just rein yourself in, or do you think that wouldn't fulfill your creative?
If they ask me, I can only use pentatonic, maybe.
Yeah, your band.
If they're good
plectrum.
with it.
That's it. You can only use a plectrum and play pentatonic scales.
Well, if you are a session player, you need to serve the song 100%. So sometimes you need to, you should never use 100% of your technique on the solos, because it really depends on the context. And I think Guthrie also knows that, because it doesn't go 100% on the Stephen Wilson solos. But it depends on the song you are looking for, the guitar player you are looking for. And there are some players that maybe they don't have an outstanding technique, but they know how to solo on a song. And maybe there are some players that are incredible shredders and tapping, sweeping and all of that, but if you put them on a song context, they will be out of context. And so it's something you have to learn, I think, playing on the songs. It's a different thing than playing on instrumental songs or your kind of songs. So yeah, you need to have discipline, of course.
And I guess that leads on to that sense of, you know, you released your first album last year. It's been, you know, everybody I've spoken to or read about that's listened to the album has great things to say about it. So that's a, you know, it doesn't sound like a first album. It sounds like the album of an accomplished, you know, guitar player.
Thank you.
But I wonder, I mean, you've got so much time ahead of you to do more music, but what is it that attracts you? You know, are there challenges? Are you drawn to perhaps trying to different genres of music, or just I don't know what's the. It almost feels like you've climbed Mount Everest with your first album. So like, what's the next mountain?
Well, I think it's a matter of. Well, sometimes I feel a little bit nervous because you feel so much pressure sometimes because the first album was great, the second album will be even more great. But it's not like that. It can be wherever. I mean, it's not something that I'm still working on the exact direction that I want to take, because there are so many styles that I like that sometimes I can't decide the right direction. I don't want to do like a rock album or a fusion album or a straight jazz album, because it's not myself, you know. That's why the journey is more like how I picture myself as a guitar player, because there are jazz songs, there are more rock-oriented stuff. And that's actually what I would like to do for the second album, but being more on the composition side of things. And I think there will be also songs where I don't solo, and songs where maybe the guitar is not really the main protagonist, you know? Because we guitar players tend to we tend to write a lot with our instrument in our hands. And we want to try the new toys, you know, the new lick that we learned, the new riff, and we try to do as much as we can in just one song. And that's also what I try to do for the first album sometimes. So what I wanted to do for the second one is to have a more pure approach, let's say. Sometimes I try to compose without having the guitar in my hands, so it doesn't influence me in a bad way, because I shred a lot with this instrument, so it's not sometimes the right thing to do if you want to compose.
You're talking about just trying to notate what's in your head, or are you talking about using a different instrument to compose?
Maybe also using a different instrument, but having like a more pure approach without thinking too much how I will play it on the guitar, you know? That's a secondary thing. You need to have the idea first. And I think with this approach you can write more original things, let's say. But of course I'm fascinated about composition, because I feel that if I mix every influence that I had during the years, I will create something unique. And not unique in a technical way, unique in a musical way. Because I don't want people that listen to me only because I play with fingers. That's a secondary thing. I want people that listen to me because of just the music, you know.
Yeah, maybe some singing on a future album?
That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
I was thinking about maybe doing another instrumental album, but with 2 songs with a singer. So most of it would be instrumental, like always, and maybe 2 or 3 songs.
I think for me that's, if you're going to start songwriting, and at the minute you bring in a singer, you bring in another dimension of the lyrics can have a meaning. And I think it opens up the audience as well to you know, it's a much wider audience that want to hear stuff. And I'm not talking about necessarily going down the, you know, the Eric Clapton, Joe Bonamassa kind of route, you know, which I guess people would probably look to you and go, oh, could you do that, you know? But I mean, as in, just could be another singer, I mean, that would be, you know, I'm really interested to hear. Like I say, I'm not a real expert on that genre of music, but it really doesn't sound like a first album. You know, it just sounds like an experienced album. Is it the same the bass player and the drummer, is that the same two guys that you've worked with since you were 20 years old, or?
Yeah, no, they're actually two bands. The first one are Giuseppe Bruno and Stefano India, Giuseppe on the drums and Stefano on the bass. And I started with them in 2020, I think. And now I work with Gianluca Pellerito on drums and Riccardo Oliva on the bass, and that's the second band. I recorded 2 songs with them from the album, and all the other ones are with Pepe Stefano, basically.
And who's the band that you just played the dates with in the UK?
With UK was with another project. It was with Roof Lab. Yeah. Right. It's a quartet. We play like fusion electronic stuff. It's kind of a strange thing. Yeah, yeah. And it was my first time playing with in-ears. Actually, I never played with in-ears. It was kind of strange at first, but you get used to it. Yeah.
Well, we'll come on to gear. Why don't we? I mean, we've talked about your technique. Why don't we have a little bit of listen? I mean,
sure.
As you can imagine, this is going to be a strange fusion of old and new, talentless and talented. But I'm just gonna. We're playing some Yamaha guitars. We should say a big thank you to Yamaha today, because they're the guys who've kind of sponsored this little trip. And obviously we'll talk about your association with Revstar and stuff like that in a minute. But have a listen and just, I mean, I said, we're just literally just going to play this kind of like F sharp minor to A kind of type comp. And you're, it's lunatic. Well, I said, I just started playing this, and this is all made up and improvised and just crazy. And I'm not. Am I really going here? Come on, keep going. This is what a normal guitar player sounds like. That's enough. Man alive. I don't know how long I could do that for without just every note there. I'm going, oh my God, Matteo's played like infinitely. There we are. There we are. What can I say? Look, I mean, let's talk about gear. Let's talk about gear. You're so f***ing good on the guitar. It's unbelievable. Just, I don't know what else. I mean, I have jammed with some epically good guitar players, but I'm not sure I've really. That's just another level. Another level.
Thank you.
So let's talk about gear, because I quite like. It's quite refreshing that you've chosen some highly accessible gear for normal, mortal guitar players. You're well quoted of saying, actually, people can get way too obsessed with what's the fretboard made of and what, and actually just as long as the thing stays in tune, you're pretty happy.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the choice of guitar and the choice of the digital pedal board, because it as I say, it's all highly accessible and it all feels like it's very functional. So I've never known you play anything other than Yamaha. So was there a period before Yamaha that you played other things?
Actually, my very first good guitar, let's say, was a Gibson SG, and I played it for a long time, I think. So that was what I was searching for, actually. A guitar that was similar to the SG, so very light and with a good piece of mahogany, And what I was trying to do is to have like a kind of Gibson SG vibe, but with a more versatile guitar. So that's how I choose the Revstar, because it was tonally really similar to the Gibson. But at the same time, I needed to play also some jazz with it and some like fusion and everything in between. So that's why I chose this guitar, because it was really versatile to me. And I wasn't really interested on the specs, first of all. I remember that when I first tried the Revstar, I didn't even know what wood was. But it was sounding good to me, so I didn't need the need of knowing everything about the guitar before buying it. If that feels good to you, you don't need to ask yourself, what is it?
So was this the previous version of Revstar, or have you always had this shape of Revstar?
That actually was based on the previous version, and the previous version is a little bit smaller than the actual professional Revstars. And it is, of course, slightly modified. You have this neck carve here, for example, so it's more accessible on the higher frets.
So this is a Japanese kind of custom-made one for you. But the first one that you had, was that just one you bought from a shop?
Yeah.
That's always the best endorsement, I think, that is, where the artist just has a guitar that they've purchased with their own money, and then that relationship develops, and then a brand like Yamaha can, build you something more unique for you. But what have your two humbuckers? Because there was a quote not that long ago from you where you were saying, or maybe it was that long ago, maybe it was 5 years ago, but you were saying single coils was were your favourite sort of most versatile sounding pickup, but obviously not anymore.
you can't get the split here, actually. So I use like the 3 main position. Before was the 5-way split, but actually choose to just get the 3 classic positions, because I never actually used the middle ones. But yeah, in order to get some of the Strat sounds, I think you need for sure single coils. This is for me the first choice if I have to solo. But if I have to comp someone or maybe do some rhythm stuff, sometimes single coils sounds better. But that's the guitar I have for my trio stuff, basically. So it's my go-to.
The first track on the album, there's a heavy use of the tremolo arm on the first track. Like there's a lot.
Yeah, Silk Road. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of where you're starting the chord with the arm bent down, and then you're pitching up to the chord.
Yeah.
Which guitar did you use for that when you were recording?
That was a Yamaha Pacifica.
Oh, okay,
and,
just another Yamaha.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yamaha Pacifica. I think it was the previous model, not the professional one. And most of the time was this Revstar here and the Yamaha Pacifica. I think the Yamaha was the 820, I think it's called.
Yeah.
And also the first Revstar I had was the 820, I think. And this is actually based not on the Japanese model, but actually is an American-made model. It was made in California by YGG, is basically the Luthers from Yamaha. And it doesn't have anything fancy. It's basically a regular Revstar with some modifications. These are actually the Marzio. I don't remember the names. I think this one is a PAF 59 reissue. And this one, I don't remember the name, but it was really cool, like Groundbreaker or something.
I noticed. I noticed you got the 2 strap buttons. Is this?
Yeah, that was an experiment actually.
Right.
Because I like to have the guitar not really high. I don't like to have it like that because then I have to do this, you know. So I like to have this part of the body a little bit like that, so I can have the neck more on this angle. Yeah. And it's actually more beneficial for your left hand, I think. That's how like classical players used to play, you know. Yeah. Like you have like the rest for your foot, and you play like that. And I wanted to do like a similar thing, standing up with the strap. Yeah.
It's a very, you know, it's a beautiful guitar, and again, you make it sound incredible. Now, tell us about which came first? Because obviously, for those that don't know, Line 6 is part of the Yamaha group. So did Yamaha introduce you to Line 6 after you started playing their guitar, or were you playing Line 6 anyway?
No, I think it was after Yamaha. They introduced me first to the DT25, the amp.
Oh, yeah.
And I used it for a while, but it was too heavy for live gigs, so I chose to take the Helix Floor first, the bigger one, but it was too big. And then I chose this one for traveling. But actually, if I have a local gig, I use the big Helix, of course, but if I have to travel, it's too big. So I use this one if I have to travel. I pretty much have all the sounds I use.
So we had we started this interesting conversation just before we started filming. And I mentioned that John Connon, who's a guitar player, if you follow Andertons, you'll be quite familiar with, and is similar age to you. And John, we nicknamed him Digital John, because when I first met him, he'd never played a regular amp. He'd learned to play guitar using a Line 6 pod and then plugins, and now he uses Neural Quad Cortex. But you said you thought it was helpful to have a good understanding of traditional analog equipment to enable you to get the best out of your Helix. Could you just go into that a bit more?
Yeah, the first problem I had with the Helix is that I didn't know the replication of the amps. Like I was reading the name and I didn't know what amp was. So in order to have some knowledge about real amps, I luckily had some amps from my father, and I tried some of them out, and I realized, okay, I like Marshall for distortions, I like Fender for clean, and I try to replicate the same stuff with the digital, but actually I never thought that I wanted to replicate exactly the analog stuff. I just wanted to go on a different way with the digital ones, and so that's why I think having some knowledge about analog stuff can help you achieve your result in a faster way, let's say, rather than trying 80 different cabs and you don't know maybe what a cab is, basically, and how it responds to you in a room. So I think you need to know what an amp feels first before actually go digital, because I feel that I know better what I'm doing. That's the simple answer, I think. And another thing was that I don't like to have I like to have smooth transitions between each sound. And when I was transitioning between clean and distorted, sometimes I was hearing like a little click before, and thanks to the snapshot on the Helix, I was able to replicate this kind of smooth
Yeah.
transition, and that was really important to me because I have a lot of songs when I have to play like a distortion stuff, and then I have to go immediately to chords, and then I have to play maybe with a jazz kind of sound. So that kind of smooth transition was really easy to achieve with digital. That's why I choose digital. But actually the first reason was because I'm really lazy and I like to go straight to the PA and have always the same
It's
sounds.
a crazy compact rig. I mean, that's one gig bag, isn't it? Guitar and
Yeah.
pedalboard in the same gig bag. But when you're on stage, though, and if you're straight into the PA, are you more comfortable? You mentioned in-ear recently.
Yeah.
Is that something that you think you could get used to, or would you prefer to go back to having some sound through a wedge?
Well, I still prefer the wedges, simply because if I hear too much guitar, I can go
Right.
to another part of the stage, let's
Right.
say, and hear a little bit less. Or if I want to hear more, I can go
Yeah.
more to the wedges. You can't really do that with in-ears. You need
Yeah.
to have a perfect listening, otherwise you will sound uncomfortable. And if you have too much guitar with in-ears, it's going to sound weird because
Yeah.
you feel out of place, you know?
Yeah.
And that's the hard thing with in-ears. You don't need to exaggerate with volume, because the first gig I exaggerated a lot with volume and it was painful. But the second one was a little bit better. You need to get used to it. But I think the way I play, I still prefer the wedges. If you don't have sequences or click, there's no need to use in-ears, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, well, look, man, thank you very much for coming in, talking
Thank
us
you.
through your rig and some of the music. Please go and listen to Matteo's music. You know, whether you listen on YouTube or you listen to the album, it's a great experience. Matteo's going to hang around a little bit more because there's another guitar company that he's worked with as well from his home country, hometown, not quite hometown, but home country.
Yeah, home country, yeah.
Called Bacci Guitars, and Bruno is also here with us. So we're going to do a second video with Matteo after lunch. But yes, for now, why don't you just play us out with something? I don't mind what, but just yeah. Do you know Smoke on the Water? Is that...
Wonderwall!
Yeah. A bit of bonus footage here. We thought we'd just plug this guitar in for a second.
Yeah.
On the, what do you think? You know, what in terms of songs? What are you naturally going to look for a guitar with a trem system and an HSS kind of pickup configuration on? You know, when is that guitar going to be more appropriate than this one?
Well, first of all, I like to have the bar near the strings, so as much as close as here, because I play with fingers. So if I have the bar too much high, the finger will not reach the string. So because of that, I would like to have like a different setting actually. But the thing is, it needs to stay in tune first of all, and second, I don't search for really high specs actually. This is the Wilkinson bridge, right? Yeah. But the important thing to me is that there is consistency, especially when I start the note low and I reach the note. So if you have this kind of... And so it really depends on also the tone you're using. I'm not really fancy about this.
Well, look, we have sprung this on Matteo slightly. This was just literally one that we took out of a box in the store, so we haven't set the trem system up, and the strings are all brand new. So, but do you want to just give us that quick shred, just to show at least what it sounds like? It's a cool looking guitar though. That was one take. Unbelievable. Right. Lunchtime.